excited to have you guys here. I will go ahead and get started with the biography. And this biography is amazing. I couldn't cut it short, so it's a little bit long, but it is phenomenal. So, salam, Sister Huwaida. Thank you for being here with us. All right, today we have Huwaida Arraf, a Palestinian American active. Is a Palestinian American attorney and human rights activist. Over the past 2 decades, she has been involved in a number of legal and grassroots initiatives for Palestinian rights. In 2001, she co-founded the International Solidarity Movement, a Palestinian-led nonviolent resistance movement, which has twice been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. In 2007, Huwaida helped build one of the first accredited clinical legal education programs in the Arab world at Al-Quds University in Jerusalem. She was one of the initiators and organizers of the first delegation of lawyers to enter Gaza after Operation Cast Lead in 2000, between 2008 and 2009, and co-authored the report on their findings, Onslaught, Israel's Attack on Gaza and the Rule of Law. Huwaida is the former chairperson of the Free Gaza Movement and from August to December 2008 led 5 successful sea voyages to the Gaza Strip to confront and challenge Israel's illegal blockade on the 2 million Palestinians living there. She was one of the primary organizers of the Gaza Freedom Flotilla and was traveling with it when it was lethally attacked by Israeli forces on May of 2010. In 2011, she was one of the 6 Palestinian Freedom Riders who, inspired by the U.S. civil rights movement's freedom rides of the 1960s, attempted to ride segregated Israeli settler public transport, for which they were harassed, then violently arrested. Huwaida is currently based in Detroit, where she practices civil rights law, advocating for people abused by the system, including victims of the Flint water crisis, police brutality, wrongful arrests, voter disenfranchisement, and the suppression of students advocating for Palestine. In 2022, Huwaida was a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives for Michigan's 10th Congressional District. She is the former co-chair of the National Lawyers Guild Palestine Subcommittee and sits on a number of organizational boards, including the Palestinian American Bar Association, the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights, and the Swedish Organization for Human Rights Information. She continues to educate and organize for Palestinian liberation, as well as for Arab, Muslim, and youth involvement in the American political process. Welcome, Huwaida Arraf. Wow, what an amazing resume, biography. Phenomenal, phenomenal. I'm so honored to have you here with us today.
Thank you. It is an honor for me to be with you, although I must admit I'm a little intimidated by TikTok, so I hope I don't mess up.
I know this is your first TikTok live, is that correct?
Correct.
Well, we are so happy to have you, and I'm honored to be the first live that you are with. So, Alhamdulillah, we have amazing panelists here and an amazing amount of viewers. So, thank you everybody for being here. I'm going to start with the questions and then I'll pass it on to the panelists. But I'd like to begin by addressing the current events unfolding in the United States. Immigrants are increasingly being targeted by ICE, and we've recently seen the Trump administration authorize surveillance of immigrants' social media accounts to flag what they're calling anti-Semitic activity. This monitoring can potentially be used to deny immigration benefits. But is this truly about combating anti-Semitism, or is it an attempt to shield Israel from criticism?
Oh gosh, it has nothing to do with combating anti-Semitism. Actually, I would say that it is very anti-Semitic in and of itself, because the administration is putting Jews at the center of unlawful policies. So basically, it's saying that we're going to violate people's civil rights because of Jewish people. And that's just, one, not true, two, very anti-Semitic, and three, it's actually ignoring what so many Jews have been saying, and activists. But we have thousands and thousands of Jews who have been saying, "Oh, do not violate people's rights in our name," and they themselves have been advocating for Palestinian rights and Palestinian liberation. But what we've been seeing in the United States and really around the world is that the governments only want to listen to Jews with a certain perspective, and that perspective is protecting Israel no matter what. So it's the Zionist perspective, and what they're doing is conflating Zionism with Semitism, or anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism, which is absolutely wrong. And what does protecting Israel from criticism mean? It means that we allow the continued slaughter of Palestinians, denial of basic rights, and certainly as Americans, but also in other places, we're paying for it. We're paying for it with our money. We're paying for it really with our lives, I would say, because what is happening to Palestinians right now, I mean, it is unfathomable, but we have been watching it for 18 months, and it is a precursor to what could happen to anybody else if we don't stop this, because Israel and the United States are not only killing and annihilating Palestinians, but they're attempting to do that to the whole international legal system. And so we're not, we're talking about having no international law. It's going to be the law of the jungle, and in that case, no one is safe. So to go back to your original question, and if you want to talk about the law more, because it has never been, all that great, but it is something, and we have to actually keep pushing and keep working towards a time when, a time and a place where the law actually treats everyone equally, and it's not only might equals right. But if we keep going down the path we're going now, the international law, any kind of protection is going to be abolished. And so to prevent people and to scare people, to silence people from criticizing Israel, the government's been passing really these fascist laws. We are descending, if we're not already, into fascism and authoritarianism, because they are stripping us from the very rights that make up, or the underpinnings of democracy. And why do they need to do that? Because the world has been awakened to what Israel is doing. I mean, you can't hide it. There has been global uproar, and certainly here in the United States, and especially with the student movement, and they know that people are outraged, and they want to silence that so that Israel can keep doing what it's doing. And to silence that, you have to basically take away people's right to free speech, and that's what we're doing. Not we, sorry, that is what the government is doing. But I would say, although I know it's scary for a lot of people, and I don't want to be seen as saying, don't let that scare you. But when I say we can't let them get away with it, that's going to take all of us. That is going to really take all of us in believing that, our silence is not going to protect us, and we have to fight in the ways that we can. Certainly lawyers are stepping up to challenge, and I believe that next week there is going to be a lawsuit against the stripping of visas filed, because it, we can talk about this more, but it is a tactic that is really intended to silence free speech. So it's an attack on the First Amendment, and it is couched in immigration law, but it is really just an attack on the First Amendment and to silence people so that Israel can keep slaughtering Palestinians.
And this kind of gets me right into my next question. Like, we're witnessing this disturbing trend with the students being detained by ICE simply for speaking out against Israel's actions in Gaza. Many of them haven't been charged with any crime. What rights do immigrants have in these cases, especially when it comes to First Amendment protections, like you were mentioning? And where is America heading if this continues? Is this only going to be for immigrants, or do you see this also going to be sliding into like American citizens as well?
Yeah, let me start by saying that yes, the executive, secretary of state, the president, they usually have kind of wide latitude in immigration issues. And that's why we see immigration courts generally rule in favor of the administration. But government cannot use the pretext of someone constituting a threat by being a present in our country, because that is what Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, that is what he's saying. He's using this obscure section of a law that was passed in 1952. It's called the McCarran-Walter Act, and it was used back then. This was the time of McCarthyism, and it was used to keep people out of the country that they thought were, communist, and it was used also to deport people back then. So it says, this section of the law says that this immigrants can be deported if the Secretary of State determines that their presence in the United States could potentially have a negative impact on foreign policy. So that is what Marco Rubio used to detain Mahmoud Khalil, and after that, and saying, yep, we can kick them out because this is, and this section of the law gives me the right to do that. But again, one, that's not what that section of the law was intended for. Two, if you think about it practically, if he's saying that because Mahmoud Khalil or others are someone who writes an op-ed or someone who teaches about Palestine, if their presence or their actions are a threat to or can have a detrimental effect on U.S. foreign policy, then what about the thousands and tens of thousands of others in the United States and American citizens who you can't deport that are doing the same thing? So getting rid of 1, 2, 100 is not going to stop the movement. And that's how you see that this is a pretext. The whole justification that he's given totally falls apart. And what we see is it is just used to attack speech and to create this chilling effect so that others will be afraid to speak out. Now we have Mahmoud Khalil that was brought before the immigration judge in Louisiana on Tuesday, and the judge gave the government 24 hours, so until yesterday, to submit their evidence that he's accused of that he has done what they accuse him of. And what they're saying is that he's kind of a mouthpiece for Hamas. But the judge said that if the evidence isn't convincing, then she is going to dismiss the case. And that's what we're hoping for, certainly. But if it doesn't go that way, because like I said, immigration judges usually give, because the law gives the administration, the executive, wide latitude, we still have an outstanding habeas case in New Jersey. And I think his lawyers would at that point file an emergency restraining order to prevent his deportation while they litigate the habeas case. And what is argued there is exactly what I said. This is just a pretext to attack free speech. And you can't do that. You can't be making up things in order to, to silence people and to take away their right to free speech. And that it's so obvious that that is what the government is doing. So we're hoping that the immigration judge on Friday decides to dismiss the case. But if not, the fight continues. And like I said, there's also going to be proactive cases suing the government for what it's doing. And these are brought by, lawyers and legal institutions that are defending people's rights, but they should also be brought by these universities that are having their students stripped away. And I know that's another topic, so I won't go there, but that is also a problem that we are seeing so many institutions of higher learning capitulate really to the diktats of this government. But what rights do people have? If anyone who is listening, or anyone who has been informed that their status has been canceled, generally it's not just canceling a visa, because a visa is a document that you use to get in the country. But what keeps you in the country legally is your status. You're on an F1, you're a student, as long as you are, doing what you're supposed to do as part of that visa, you are in the country legally. But what the government and or the schools, it's not clear, have been doing is that when the visa is canceled, the school will cancel your status. And then you are illegal in the country. You are given a short period of time to leave. I would contact an attorney, an immigration attorney, or if, you can't afford attorney, which is fine, I would actually probably suggest that someone contact a number of organizations who are also working with other lawyers. Like, for example, myself, I'm not an immigration attorney, but I know enough to defend, and I'm volunteering with the National Lawyers Guild that if they're getting calls, to be on call to advise and to represent. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of lawyers stepping up to do that. So we have the American Civil Liberties Union you can call. You have the National Lawyers Guild. We have a national, but we also I think every state we have a National Lawyers Guild branch. And if you call the branch in your state, they should be able to get you someone to represent you. You have the Center for Constitutional Rights. Also, you have Palestine Legal. They are not as much, but also, I mean, they don't do immigration law, but they have, again, built this network of lawyers that are working pro bono or offering to volunteer to fight these unlawful policies. So that is the first thing. And know that you're not alone. It is horrific what is being done, but we're not going to let it pass, and we're going to fight. So if you get any kind of notice that your status has been canceled, please contact one of those organizations or a separate immigration attorney right away. And
Wow,
so
that
let me add, sorry, because there seems to be, and I've seen these arguments that it's a privilege to be in this country, and you can't come in this country and attack our country, etc. Look, yes, it is a privilege, but students, people who are on visas, people who are on green cards here, even if you're not a citizen, anyone in the country is entitled to constitutional rights. They are entitled to the full spectrum, and especially the right to free speech, First Amendment rights, and Fourth Amendment rights, and Fifth Amendment rights. So you have the right to due process. You have the right not to be illegally seized, and you have the right to not be detained or not to be punished for your speech, even if that is speech that is considered, that it opposes the government, as long as you are not inciting to violence. As long as the big things are, like, if you are seen as inciting to violence, then they can use that, that is not a free speech issue. Then you can say, you can say what you want. You can be against what Israel's doing. You can be against what the United States is doing in supporting Israel. And the Supreme Court has said that over and over and over again. So, I mean, they have validated, for the most part, hate speech. Again, as long as it's not inciting to violence or threatening somebody, you can say what you think. And immigrants to this country can have that right. So what the government is doing is unlawful, and you have rights, and you're not alone. So I just want to emphasize that.
Thank you, thank you. That is very, very helpful for anybody that is listening. So please make sure to like she said, there is rights, and we hear from like different Israelis or different Zionists that no, they don't have the same rights. You can't have this, but they do have rights, and please make sure you guys understand this. This is very, very important. Linda, if you want to real quick.
Yeah, just very quick. Thank you, Huwaida. I want to welcome everybody in. Let's protect the live. We're having a very important conversation this evening. Let's get the likes up, the shares out. If you haven't joined the team yet, hit that orange heart. Let's see some team bracelets. Let's help the host fulfill her goals. If you can support the big screen as well. And let's try and get a sub wave going, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, mod announcement. Okay, so I want to switch the conversation. And if you could tell us about both of the Gaza flotilla missions, specifically about the 2010 Israeli attack in which 9 people aboard were killed, and also about the most recent attempt in 2024, just recently last year, to launch another Gaza flotilla, which was ultimately blocked by Turkey. I don't know if a lot of people actually know about that. So if you can kind of speak about those and about those missions, and then the most recent one.
Yes, absolutely. First, I think let me start off by saying that, as I think most of your listeners will probably know, the October 7th certainly didn't start Israel's attack on Gaza. It wasn't what happened on October 7th. Israel has been attacking Gaza for decades. And in 2000, I was just explaining this to somebody, but in 2005, Israel said that they, are no longer occupying Gaza. They got out, and so, Gaza is free and Palestinians can build as they want. And then it has frequently been saying, Palestinians could have done this and could have done that to Gaza, but they didn't, which is all a lie, because Israel has pulled out. It had 21 illegal settlements in Gaza, and it had its military in Gaza that literally prevented Palestinians from getting to the sea, because that was only for the settlers that they had there. They pulled those out, but then they put like a near hermetic seal on Gaza. Right? It became very difficult to get out. Everything that goes in or out is controlled by Israel, even though there is one border with Egypt. Because Egypt has a peace treaty with Israel, that border is indirectly controlled by Israel. So, because as we see now, right, Israel is not allowing anything in. Egypt is not opening that border. So Israel really controls all entrances and exits into Gaza. It controls Gaza by air, by sea, by land. And that means that Gaza is still occupied. It has been occupied. The occupation there never ended, because the measure of whether a territory is occupied or not under international law is not whether or not you have boots on the ground. It is how much effective control, they call it in legal terms, effective control a foreign military has over a territory. And Israel, no doubt, controls Gaza. And so it is responsible for the health and well-being of the occupied civilian population. It never respected that, right? So after 2006, 2007, when Israel didn't like the outcome of Palestinian elections, they tightened the seal even more. And what we started to see is reports coming out about people literally dying from Israel's policies because they weren't able to get the medical treatment they needed. A lot of things aren't available in Gaza, and so people need to leave to get cancer treatment and other things. And Israel was not letting them leave, and then denying a whole host of medicines from entering. And literally, as an Israeli advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister at the time, Ariel Sharon, said, we're putting Gazans on a diet, right? They controlled the number of calories coming in, because every day aid trucks were coming in. Over 70% of Gaza's population are refugees, and so they are under the purview of UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, and they would bring in kind of food trucks. Israel slashed the amount of trucks coming in, again, to put Palestinians on a diet, and they weren't letting in ridiculous things. But what was concerning is that you were getting UN and other humanitarian reports saying that so many pregnant women with anemia, children are malnutrition, and we're seeing instances of stunted growth, and people dying because they can't get the medical attention they need. And nobody was doing anything to make Israel stop, doing this, stop choking off the people of Gaza. And at the same time, it was also de-developing the Palestinian economy. And so you mentioned that I was part of co-founding the International Solidarity Movement. We are activists, from all over the world who are actually going to the occupied Palestinian territories and standing with Palestinians in their popular resistance to the occupation. We were trying to figure out what to do about Gaza because we couldn't get in. We used to be able to get in, and some of you might know that a couple of our colleagues were killed in Gaza in 2003, 23-year-old American Rachel Corrie, and then a 21-year-old British photography student, Tom Herndal. And so Israel stopped letting International Solidarity Movement into Gaza. But the idea came, hey, why don't we try to go by boat? Why don't we try to sail from Europe? We're not going to go into Israeli waters. We're going to go right into, from European waters, international waters, right into Gaza. And if Israel tries to stop us, it should be clear to the world then that Israel's policies aren't about security. It's about punishing the people of Gaza. That is unlawful. We thought then that the world just didn't know. And if the world knew, they wouldn't stand for this. It's been a really rude awakening, what we've seen these past 18 months. But back then, this was 2008, that was our thinking, that we're either going to get to Gaza or we're going to create this big conflict at sea between the Israeli military and our small fishing boat that is trying to get to Gaza. And, I can go into just how amazing our first mission was, because we didn't expect to get into Gaza. Israel was threatening us, to stop us, to hit us. But at the last minute, Israel backed down. It didn't want that confrontation at sea. And we had 2 small fishing boats with 44 people from 17 different countries on it. And we became the first boats to get into Gaza without going through Israel in 40 years. And what we were also able to do is when we left, we were able to take out a few Palestinians that needed to leave. We were able to fit 7 on our boats, not many, but one child, 16-year-old, who had his leg blown off in an Israeli military operation, and Israel wasn't letting him leave to get treatment, to get a prosthetic leg. So we put him in his wheelchair and his father on our boat, and we sailed out, and he was able to get a prosthetic leg in Europe. And we repeated that mission, sailing into Gaza 4 more times between August and December of 2008, and Israel wasn't confronting us. But in 2008, after it started Operation Cast-Led, all the missions we tried to send then were getting hit. Israel almost sank 2 of our boats, and then it commandeered another one, arrested everybody, took the boats. So it seemed like this is not working anymore, because we really thought we're going to keep going and coming, and we're going to open a sea lane to Gaza. But they started hitting us. It wasn't working anymore. And so our options were, either we stop this tactic, it's not working, or we escalate. And we decided to escalate because we did not want to give in to this violence and let Israel continue doing what it's doing. So escalate means that, instead of sending 1 or 2 small boats, we're going to build a flotilla. And we set to work putting together this flotilla by going to different countries and different activist groups and asking them to join. And in May of 2010, we had 7 ships. Half of them, I think 3 or 4, I forget, were cargo ships carrying 10,000 tons of aid. Because after Operation Cast-Led, where Israel destroyed thousands of homes and businesses and schools and hospitals, it didn't let any building supplies in. So we were carrying building supplies and other aid, other things. Again, ridiculous if I would go through what Israel wasn't allowing in. For example, it would allow in wheelchairs, but it wouldn't allow in the batteries for the wheelchairs, and a whole host of other things. We put all of that stuff on our ships. We had 700 people from 35 countries, and we set sail. And Israel knew we were a civilian mission, because they contacted us in the middle of the night and told us to turn back. And I was on that radio with the Israeli Navy, and I explained that we are civilians from all of these countries. I named some of the countries. I said, we are no threat to you. We are unarmed, carrying only humanitarian aid. And I kept repeating that. Don't hit us. Don't hit us. They went offline. They didn't contact us anymore for a couple of hours. And then all of a sudden we hear shooting. They are shooting at the flagship of the flotilla, the Mavi Marmara, and there are helicopters above. And what happened then was just a bloodbath. They killed 9 people, right then and there. And one activist was in coma for a few years, and then he passed. Over 50 people injured, and everybody arrested. 6 of the 9 who were killed on board, a UN fact-finding mission determined that they most likely were executed because of the bullet wounds that were so, some of them were at point blank range, or some of them were in the back of the head, as they were obviously constituting no kind of threat to a soldier if you're shot in the back, in the head. And one of them, who was shot 5 times, was a 19-year-old Turkish American student. He was planning to go to med school, and he was doing this humanitarian mission to Gaza before. Furkan Dugan was his name. And this goes to show you, and we'll see it today, but after the UN fact-finding mission said a whole host of things and found Israel's blockade illegal and Israel's attack on our flotilla illegal, and that Israel most likely executed 6 civilians, including a Turkish American. The United States, in the Human Rights Committee where this report was presented, was the only country to vote against the adoption of that report. They don't have a veto, but your own citizen is executed and you want to veto the whole report, and did nothing after that to hold Israel accountable. We tried nothing. We tried to file 2 lawsuits. I was part of one lawsuit because I was on an American flagged ship and Israel attacked us and brutalized us, and that was dismissed. And Furkan Dugan's parents' father tried to sue also, and the government, the U.S., intervened and said that they're against this this lawsuit going forward. That it is Israel and Israeli officials have foreign sovereign immunity. So this immunity, the United States not even standing up for its own citizens, putting the interests of Israel before that of its own citizens. And over the years, again, no matter what Israel does, continuing to protect Israel in the international forum at the United Nations, using its veto, and then continuing the weapons flow and increasing the weapons flow to Israel. What does that do when you are never held accountable? You think that you are totally immune. You have a sense of impunity, and Israel has continued to act. So every time we see an escalation, right? An escalation of the level of violence that they are using. And they're not hiding it, because from their leaders, from Netanyahu down to the foot soldier, they think that nobody can hold them accountable. And that's why we see their soldiers, on social media, just broadcasting the horrific things that they're doing. It is, we have created, or at least helped enable this genocide. And the government, there is no words really for the evil that they're exposing Palestinians and the rest of the world to, because it's, we're seeing it and people feel so helpless. But I would say, as difficult as it is to not feel helpless, because our governments aren't going to do it. One thing about international law that we learn, and we know that the law is good. I mean, it's there, but there is no enforcement mechanism to international law, right? And to implement international law, you need states to have the political will to do it. And how do you create that political will? It comes down to the people and how much we can pressure our governments and drive them there. And so we have to continue to do that. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, because I
The
talked for
Turkey.
so long, I didn't tell
No,
you.
I mean, this story, wow. You saying that because you always hear Israel doesn't, target civilians. Israel doesn't target civilians. And this just totally debunks the entire thing. The entire thing. And those six that were killed, and you were saying some in the back, those are not a threat, and they're civilians. So this completely destroys any argument from any Israeli standpoint that Israel doesn't target civilians. And obviously, we see it now, but they continue to try to justify the genocide in any way, shape, or form. But yes, if you could also let us know about the 2024 flotilla that maybe many people don't know was going to happen, and why it didn't happen.
Yeah, so we wanted to, we needed to do something, because, Israel's siege on Gaza, I mean, it's part of the genocide, right? But that siege is just so unlawful in so many ways, because it's, I won't get into the legal aspect of it, but what is horrific is not only that Israel is imposing this siege, because we know what Israel wants. It wants to get rid of the Palestinians. Israel, the Israeli state, is a settler colonial project. And as a settler colonial project, you need to replace the indigenous Palestinian or indigenous population. And to do that, you kill them or push them out, or you totally dominate them. Anyway, so Israel has been doing that, not just now. Of course, this is the extreme, but for decades. And I started to say, what is so infuriating is that even the countries that say they oppose Israel's policies are part of imposing that siege, because no country has to respect that. No country has to respect that. Turkey, Greece, Malaysia, they can all of them have the capabilities to put their humanitarian aid on a ship, lead an armada or flotilla to Gaza right now, and insist, and let Israel try to stop them. Create that crisis, because you know that Israel right now is trying to exterminate 2.2 million people in Gaza, and all you're doing is issuing statements. That it is infuriating, and that's
Empty
why
words.
empty words that come with no action behind it. And that is why, you know, those of us organizing with the flotilla, we're like, we have to go. And we know it's dangerous. We know that, you know, not only has Israel attacked us before and killed a number of our members in 2010, but they're all the more unleashed now. It's all the more violent, and certainly they're not going to care about hitting our boats. But we had so many people that are saying it doesn't matter, we're going to go. And so in April of 2024, we had managed to get together 3 large ships. One of them was a cargo ship that we loaded with 5,000 tons of humanitarian aid, and the others were passenger ships. So we had hundreds of people come to Istanbul in Turkey. And the night before we were set to sail, we learned that our boats are flagged. To be on the sea, you have to fly the flag of a country. And we had the flag of Guinea-Bissau, which are, you know, some flags are easier to get than others. And that was one of our flags. And they withdrew the flag under Israeli pressure. They withdrew the flag, which means we weren't legal to leave port. That was a problem. Unfortunately, that was going to take a while to fix or to get a new flag. So we had to send people home, but everybody was willing to just come back as soon as we had those flags. And we did work out the flag situation, but then we learned that Turkey, the government, was detaining our ships and it was not letting them go. And this is, again, like I said, I mean, Turkey and the government, they say they're so pro-Palestinian and they're making these big speeches and whatnot. But when it comes to practically doing something, they literally prevented our boats, held our boats hostage, prevented them from leaving to do what really our governments should be doing, to risk our lives to sail to get to Gaza. But so that unfortunately did not come about, but we have not given up, and we have been working to try to release our boats or get other ones. And I would have your listeners just keep watching the social media Freedom Flotilla, because we're hoping to send a flotilla soon. So we have
Wow.
not given up. We have not
So,
given up.
so till now, they're still being held hostage by Turkey.
Yes, I can't give a lot of details, but yes, some of our
Okay.
ships are held hostage by Turkey. Yes.
Wow. Is there anything that any of us, there's about 270 people here, that we can do, like send a letter, I don't know, but anything that we can do to assist?
Right now, I would say not in terms of Turkey. You know, we tried that, and there were protests, and there was literally for 3 months a 24-hour vigil at the port. People chaining themselves to the port night and day for 3 months, calling on Turkey to release those ships, and letters and everything. But when you hear that the flotilla has set sail, we need everybody to just have all eyes on the flotilla, contact your representative, your government, and demand that Israel give the flotilla passage to Gaza. Demand
Mhm.
it, because especially in the United States, if the president says don't hit that flotilla, it won't be hit. Otherwise, it could be hit, or best case scenario, everyone's going to be detained, arrested. Yeah. So
Yeah, and with
the
the
only
Trump
thing
administration,
I know
you
it's
know,
yeah. I mean, I know it's difficult, but again, we just have to keep doing what we can. And although there have been millions rising up around the world, and we haven't been able to, it seems like, to stop Israel, we have made change. We have, if nothing else, sent a message to Palestinians that they're not alone. Like, the governments are betraying them and their rights and everything they say they stand for, but the people are not. And people are doing what they can in their home countries, and then there are even people that are going to try to reach them. But even though there'll only be, there can't be that many people on the ships, if your listeners can help us truly make it a global flotilla by watching it, sharing the social media stuff that comes out, and calling your representative to demand that Israel not hit the civilian flotilla, it will truly be a global effort and made all that more powerful.
Absolutely. We will definitely do that. We will do what we can. And I mean, that is amazing, amazing work, Huwaida. So thank you for your efforts. And we will definitely be watching that and we'll do what we can. Just two more questions, inshallah, and then I'll open it to the panelists. Looking to the future, what are your hopes for the Palestinian rights movement, and how do you envision building broader international solidarity and understanding?
I think that, as I said, unfortunately, it has taken a live stream genocide, but a lot of people have been awakened to what has been happening to Palestinians for so long. And Palestinian activists have been, over the years, really building from the grassroots, building this solidarity and true solidarity, really, with people who are oppressed in many different ways, in all different ways, in the United States and around the world. And that's based on a true understanding that our liberation is intertwined. And it's not just a slogan. It is recognizing that those powers that are oppressing us are really the same. And so I hope that we can continue building that, because the future has to be one where everyone can live free. In terms of our advocacy, and I know this is not part of your question, but I think it's so important to say, because what we keep hearing in terms of rhetoric coming out of representatives is, a two-state solution, and negotiations, and Palestinians never should be, nobody should have to negotiate for their inalienable rights, right? It is a right of every person in the world to be free, right? To have self-determination. And we had the International Court of Justice say that definitively, though we knew, but there was a very important ruling from the International Court of Justice that came out on July 19th, 2024, and it said a number of things. It said that Israel's occupation, because occupation actually in international law is not illegal, but Israel's occupation, because it has gone on for decades, it's not like a temporary thing as occupations usually are. It's gone on for decades, and it has included colonization. It has been taking the land, it has been dispossessing the Palestinians of the land, and it has instituted a racially segregated regime, apartheid. All of those policies are illegal, and so Israel's very presence in the West Bank, including Jerusalem and Gaza, has become illegal, and it needs to end. It needs to end as quickly as possible. Israel has an obligation to do that, and the international community has an obligation. So all states and international organizations have an obligation to do what they can to pressure Israel to bring this illegal, unlawful situation to an end. And one of the most important things for me in that decision was the affirmation that Palestinians don't have to negotiate for their rights. Israel has been denying them the right to self-determination for decades. And that right is not contingent on negotiations, on the Oslo peace process, on any kind of conditions that Israel puts for Palestinians. No, Palestinians are entitled to that right now without condition. So you can't say, and it's really bogus, it's always been to say that Palestinians have to negotiate for their liberation. Okay. And I would encourage people not to kind of fall into that, negotiating for a two-state solution and bring the two sides back to the table and all of these things. No, what we have is, Israel, which is now really a rogue genocidal state that needs to be brought to justice. But it is also, as I mentioned when we started, was established, and Israel's founding fathers don't deny, right? If you read their statements, and back then, they say very clearly that they intend to colonize Palestine. And so that in order to have really. People talk about peace. You can't have peace without justice. You can't have peace without people being free and equal. And the only way to be free and equal for Palestinians and Israelis is to dismantle the colonial apartheid structure that exists right now. So it's not Palestinians negotiating with Israel. No, it is how to dismantle what we have now in terms of the Israeli regime and the settler colonial state and the apartheid system, dismantle that. And then you talk about building a future where all people are free. And that is what we're doing kind of on the ground in the ongoing kind of education and awareness, people coming to understand what has been happening for decades, what has reached like unimaginable levels of evil right now because we have let Israel get away with it so long, and what our role in it has been. Certainly Americans with our tax dollars, but also other Western countries and the entire world really with our complicity.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. Thank you, Huwaida. And my last question, and I really, I've heard you use the term social genocide when discussing the Palestinian experience. Can you expand on what that term means to you personally and how it shapes your approach to advocacy? And when I actually looked it up, I was like, wow, this is 100% spot on. So if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, some people think that genocide, and you hear this a lot from apologists for Israel, that, well, you still have this many people in Gaza, or the population is increasing and not decreasing, so how can it be a genocide? For a genocide, you actually don't even have to kill anybody really under the law. The law is, names 5 acts that is done with the intention to destroy a people for their, religious or ethnic background. So one of those things is creating conditions of life that is intended to destroy a people. And life isn't just about breathing, right? You need to do all kinds of other things. And part of life is our culture, our history, our society. And so for me, the genocide didn't just start after October 7th. It has been kind of systematic. And we see it and we've seen it over the years and over the decades with Israel's attempt to, one, separate us. Palestinians in Gaza can't get to the West Bank, and you have the refugee camps, and you have, even in the West Bank, Palestinians can't get from one place to another. So you are trying to erase a people, not just physically, but culturally, economically, spiritually. It's about denying Palestinians access to education, to healthcare, all of which has been happening. Just yesterday, they closed 6 schools in Jerusalem. Just yesterday, they attacked, stormed the university that, in the introduction, you said, I helped build the first legal clinic at Al-Quds University. I saw a video of literally soldiers storming the university and students running all over the place. You are disrupting education. Of course, we know in Gaza, they destroyed all of the universities. But this has been systematic for decades. So it is the totality of the violence that is, social, what called social genocide, but fits the description of genocide. And then you can also get into all of the other things in terms of our culture and cultural appropriation and other things. It's literally trying to erase us. And that is what we have been fighting. We have been fighting this erasure. And so again, genocide is not about how many people you manage to kill. It's about all the different ways that you're trying intentionally to destroy people.
Wow, phenomenal, phenomenal. Thank you so, so much, Huwaida. That concludes my portion of the questions. And now I will open it up to the panelists. So we will go down the panel. We'll start with Linda. Go ahead, Linda.
Salam, Huwaida. I wanted to begin by saying that your work is very admirable. You being a strong Palestinian woman in itself is an act of resistance. I think I speak for the majority of pro-Palestinians, especially the Palestinian Americans, in saying that many of us carry this sense of guilt or complicity in what's happening to our people, this genocide against our people. My question is pertaining to the concept of taxation without representation. What rights, if any, do we have under the law regarding where our tax dollars are going to?
That is a great question. Look, we don't really have under the law. And if you decide to, for example, withhold your taxes in an act of protest, people can do that, but they are certainly risking, criminal prosecution or other sanctions. I haven't studied this area of the law very much, so I don't want to give any legal advice, but I can tell you that the National Lawyers Guild last year actually did a webinar on this for people who wanted to consider that form of protest, not paying their taxes. So I don't know if we have archived any of it on our website, but that is certainly a valid form of protest. But not all protests come without, especially when you're engaging in direct action, in civil disobedience, you're trying to disrupt the system, you're understanding that it might come with some consequences. And that certainly is one, but it's, in my opinion, it's a valid action to take.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Linda. We'll go next to Resistance is Beautiful. I don't know if you actually have followed his account or seen his videos, but he is a phenomenal activist who's a one-man stand. He goes out and waves the flag, and just that by itself, mashallah, he has raised awareness. So W Resistance, go ahead, brother.
Thank you, Taz. I paid her to say that, sister. So, well, first of all, thank you so much for everything that you do. Listening to you, Huwaida, was very inspiring. In your opinion, based off of everything that you see, do you believe we are witnessing the downfall of Israel?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to say. Look, I'm not a historian, but I've been listening to historians who are talking about it. Actually, Israeli historians who have been talking about the end of Israel, or the end of Zionism. And certainly a lot of the markers are there. One thing I know is that Israel definitely is destroying itself, its society. I mean, even if you just think about for a society to have been supporting a genocide in the way that it has, and the truth will not die, right? We're seeing it right now. Some people want to close their eyes, but we're not only seeing it, we're documenting it. We're making sure that there is a day where nobody knows, nobody doesn't know what happened. There will be a museum to this genocide, and the society, the people, the military, the government that committed this genocide, what that does, not only to the soldiers on the ground who have carried out these brutal acts, but to the society itself, I think is absolutely detrimental. And we have been hearing about Israeli soldiers even kind of committing suicide and other things, which of course we don't like to see, but that's just, you don't just get to commit a genocide and think it's not going to reverberate in terms of the effect on your own society. And then when you're talking about economically, Israel's hurting, Israel's turned into really a pariah state internationally, you just basically have a handful of Western governments that are propping it up. But the whole world really sees what Israel's doing and doesn't accept it. And we are in this battle of who is going to win. Is it our concept of freedom and justice for everyone? Or is it the small number of Zionists and the Western countries that support them that are pushing like ethnic supremacy and might is right, no matter who you have to kill? And I'm hoping, and I'm saying we have to win, because our vision is liberation and freedom for everyone. So I think a lot of the markers are there, and I can't talk about them eloquently because I think this takes actually people who, sociologists and historians, but one of the historians that I have been listening to is Ilan Pape, who talks about this very clearly, but he also says that just like, anything when it's nearing its end, it's going to fight the hardest, so it might get even more brutal, and that is unfathomable. but he definitely talks about the end. And there's another one, Shir Heber, who's an economist, who also talks about it from a different perspective, but also coming to the same conclusion. So, and more people. So a lot more people are talking about it. I wouldn't say that I have the, expertise to talk about it in a smart way, but I believe that this settler colonial project has to come to an end. It is violent in its nature and goes against everything that we believe in as, I think, human beings who believe in just freedom and to be good to others, and that people deserve the same rights that we have. So I do believe just in my heart that it will be dismantled. It will come to an end. And that is not to say, obviously, that the Jews or Israelis who live there, destruction or anything bad should happen to them, but they should not be entitled to the privileges that they have now at the expense of the Palestinians. So I firmly believe that it will come to an end. When, I don't know, and that's more of a feeling that's based on some might call it naive optimism, but it's certainly everything that, it's why we fight, right? Yeah. Martin Luther King, I think his famous quote that I think you all know, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I put a caveat on that. It won't bend towards justice unless we fight for it. And so I'm fighting and you're fighting. And as long as we don't give up that fight, it will. And for that to happen, to bend towards justice, yes, the apartheid colonial regime must be dismantled.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for that. Inshallah, we see it shatter like glass, and that they're all held accountable. Thank you, sister.
Yes, accountability, absolutely.
Thank you, Resistance. Go ahead, DJK.
Thank you, Taz, for hosting this live. Huwaida, thank you very much for joining us this evening. So I just have a question here. As we know, Stop Anti-Semitism Now wants Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate Miss Rachel for what they call using Hamas propaganda, because she stated that children don't deserve to starve, and that 15,000 children have been slaughtered at the hands of Israel at the hands of Israel. So my question to you is, do you think somebody like Miss Rachel can pursue a defamation case against Stop Anti-Semitism Now?
Yes, absolutely. I think she has a strong case. Actually, there are a number of cases that I think could be held against these outfits that are propagating lies that is destroying people's lives. So, you worry because some of the people that are in the administration now think the same way as these ardent Zionists do, like Stop Anti-Semitism folks, whoever's behind that, or Beitar, or they. It is a bit worrying, this administration, but we have recourse in terms of the courts, and there still is due process. Hopefully we can hang on and continue to fight for due process in this country so that any kind of accusation like that cannot hold. I would hope that the more they do this, the more people recognize how ridiculous it is. And I think that that's happening. For example, I live in I am in the Detroit area, but more in a suburb that is not very progressive. It is middle of the road, some, a 50-50, I think, Republican, Democrat. And I've been seeing local messages of people saying this is ridiculous. Like, my kids love Miss Rachel. What? Because she thinks other kids shouldn't die, that this is, she should be investigated. So people who don't necessarily care or look, to Palestine, or it isn't an issue for them, are also seeing this as absolutely ridiculous. And I think the more they continue to do that, the more they expose themselves. Like, any kind of advocacy for Palestinian rights or life in any way is seen as anti-Semitism. That should raise people's eyebrows. It's like, what are you talking about? We know that they're deliberately doing this, but and we also know that deliberately kind of conflating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism does a huge disservice to actually the true fight against anti-Semitism, because that is a problem, right? That is a problem, but we need to fight it as we fight all forms of discrimination and racism and bigotry and xenophobia. But that's not what's happening. You have some people weaponizing it to protect Israel and to protect this kind of, ethnic supremacy. And the more they get radical and obnoxious about doing it, the more they are exposed to the wider population, which is what we need, right? We need more people to be aware. So there is that. But yes, to answer your question, I do think she has a defamation suit.
Thank you. If I can ask just one more quick question, I would really appreciate it. So I just wanted to know, what are your thoughts from a legal standpoint on the on Trump's statement yesterday, stating that they would even go as far as deporting American citizens that have committed, some crimes, some felonies, basically. Would that be legal? Is that something that you see that could possibly happen?
A couple months ago, I probably would have said, no way, that can't happen. It is in the system that we know now, our constitutional, our democracy now. Yes, that is absolutely illegal. And you see, I think when Trump said it, he said, I don't know if that's legal. I don't know the law around it. He's just spitting things out. Yes, it would be illegal. It would be a violation of a few things, and certainly the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. But this administration keeps pushing the envelope, right? It keeps doing things that are that go a step further, like Israel, each and every time, and they're trying to see what they can get away with. And the things that aren't actively fought, that we let them get away with, I think will be a stripping of our rights. And it's why I say, and actually it's why Palestinians say all the time, the Palestinians are the canary in the coal mine, right? You're seeing what they're trying to do to us. And it started with the arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, and they tried to say that he is a Hamas mouthpiece, etc. They have kind of nothing on him, but are continuing to prosecute and then further arrest. And now they're arresting or canceling visas of students that aren't Palestinian protesters. They're going into criminal records, even if these people haven't been convicted of crimes. They're just being obnoxious and vindictive and targeting, not even vindictive, it's just kind of racist, targeting non-white people, immigrants. And again, if we let that fly, certainly there are a lot of citizens that this administration would consider undesirable. And certainly this administration would want to do that. But it goes back to our fight, because they are trying to, they are attacking really our civil liberties, and they are trying to strip them away. And that certainly would be one way that they can do it. But if we let them get away with everything else that they're doing, then yes, they will try to do that. We will fight it like it's being fought everywhere else. But unfortunately, that's, like I said, that's what we've seen happen in Palestine. You're not held accountable, and you keep escalating. And that's what I think that this administration will do too. And that's also why I say no one is safe. Right now, we think, we're citizens. But that's not to say that we are safe. But that's also not to say that we should be afraid. Again, this battle is too important for anyone to sit it out.
Thank you so much for answering. Taz, if you need my box, please let me know. If there is time, if I can stay on the panel, I do have a couple more questions at the end. If there is time,
Sure.
if Huwaida has time, please.
Inshallah, inshallah. And if there's anybody that's a Zionist that's not Himar that wants to come up, you can come up. Just sorry, Himar, not you. Go ahead, Lau.
Thank you, Taz, and thank you, Huwaida, for being here with us today. I appreciate you, sister. I've been reading this book by Anthony Lowenstein, The Palestine Laboratory, How Israel Exports the Technology of Occupation Around the World. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not.
Yes, I haven't read it, but I know Anthony, and I've seen and heard about his book. Yes.
Awesome. There's two excerpts from this book that I would love to ask you about and see what your opinion is, what your reaction is. I don't know if I have time for both of them, but I'm going to start with one of them. It says here, NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden said that he was shocked by the extent of intelligence sharing between the United States and Israel, raw private communications that included content and metadata. Such details would usually be minimized, meaning that personally identifiable data was removed. But the NSA was sharing huge amounts of emails and phone calls of Palestinian Americans whose relatives in Palestine may become targets due to the information gleaned. And it says here, the Snowden documents show how the Israelis received quantities of intelligence and data sharing from the United States, Canada, and the UK, much of which they used to fight what they call Palestinian terrorism. But the UK and the US also view the Jewish state as a threat to regional stability due to its belligerent policies towards Iran and activities across the Middle East. The National Intelligence Estimate has alleged that Israel is the third most aggressive intelligence service against the United States. What's your reaction on that?
My immediate reaction is that, the United States seems to be consistently working against not just human rights, but its own interests, in that Israel is a threat to if we say we want regional stability. Of course, some do argue that it's actually Israel that's serving the United States' purpose of imperialism and control all over the world, etc. I think it probably works both ways. But yes, even if we just look at what, all these threats against Iran right now, as if Iran is a threat. When is the last time Iran has ever attacked one of its neighbors? Whereas Israel is attacking like virtually all its neighbors and committing a genocide. And yet we're supposed to think that it's Iran that is a threat to regional stability. It really is Israel, and yet we continue to support it, not only militarily, financially, diplomatically, but also with this intelligence sharing. And over the years, we've had also revealed that Israel has harmed the United States in terms of spying on the U.S. also, and yet we continue to insist that this relationship needs preserving. And so it's kind of not surprising, disappointing, I guess, kind of horrifying, and something that, again, we need to continue to work against, because this, what does it serve? The United States is not protecting its own citizens. It's contributing to horrific kind of war crimes and targeting of Palestinians, and risking really not just regional, but kind of global stability. I think that this is, I think I'll say this, but I usually don't like to make a lot of comparisons, especially when it comes to, like, if we're looking at Nazism and the Holocaust, because I realize that it's sensitive to some people, and sometimes it could turn people away that you want to listen to you and that you need to listen to you. But it's just too hard to ignore the rise of this ideology that is a supremacist ideology that is threatening kind of regional and global stability. And in order to protect that ideology, you have governments around the world suppressing their own citizens. And so, again, this becomes not just about Palestine, but it becomes, again, about also rights abuses. We see whether the crackdowns in Germany, and certainly in the United States, in Italy, in France, all of these other countries, in order to allow this supremacist ideology to flourish and not to be opposed. So I guess, what can I say? The reaction is, I'm totally not surprised, but I hope more people kind of read that book and see just the depth, all of the different layers in which U.S. support for Zionism and for whatever Israel is doing is harming everything we say we stand for, and also physically harming its own citizens.
Right. I mean, I've never heard of any acts of terrorism committed by or perpetrated by Palestinian Americans, to be sure.
That is an important thing. Some of you may know or may have heard in the UK, and I think it's interesting, just, was it yesterday? That UK lawyers really filed a case to get Hamas delisted as a terrorist organization. And I think while there might not be a huge chance of success, I think that is important to actually play out, because this terrorism term is so, and terrorist or terrorist organization is so abused. I constantly think of what Holocaust survivor and Dr. Gabor Mate said. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, take the worst thing you can think of that Hamas has done and multiply it by 1,000, and you still wouldn't get to, the horrors that Israel has committed. And yet, we've seen throughout history, and certainly we see now, that it's usually groups that are fighting for their liberation that are termed terrorist groups, when the countries and governments that are suppressing them are the terrorist tactics and that they use are 100,000 of times worse. And so what has Hamas done? It's been fighting for Palestinian liberation, right? They have a right in international law, and I know you've heard this, they have a right to resist foreign occupation and domination. And that is enshrined in what's called the First Protocol, or Protocol 1 to the Fourth Geneva Conventions of 1977, which Israel and the United States are not a party to, but it has pretty much become customary law, just like the Geneva Conventions are customary law. And it says in the first article, it says that groups fighting foreign domination and occupation have a right to use armed resistance. And that's certainly what Hamas has done. Now, that doesn't give them the right to violate the laws of war, and the laws of war prohibit targeting civilians. So if you're deliberately targeting civilians, no matter who you are, that's a violation. Nobody has that right. But certainly, Hamas, Palestinians have a right to resist, and they have a right to use armed resistance, and that armed resistance is not terrorism. And yet we've, as Western countries, again, like they've done throughout history, right? It was Nelson Mandela was a terrorist until he wasn't. And so that's what we're going through right now. And so having people understand that, I think, is important. In the United States, I see a lot of people kind of around me horrified, again, people who don't know or didn't know much about Palestine, they're horrified about what they're seeing out of Gaza, and they say they don't support it, but they're confused about Hamas, or they say Hamas is, kind of put some of the blame on, or they say, I see messages saying both Hamas and Netanyahu have to go. No, there is no parallel there. There is no equating Hamas and Netanyahu. And I think as we continue to educate on this, people kind of need to understand the history of where Hamas came up from, really what they're fighting for, which is liberation, and actually how conciliatory they've been throughout the years. And I think anyone paying attention would have seen with the latest ceasefires between Israel and Lebanon, between Israel and Hamas, Israel's always the one to break them, never actually adhering to them, while the groups that are labeled terrorist groups, Hamas and Hezbollah, religiously adhere to them. And that is not new. I don't know if you guys know this, but back in 2004, right? Before 2004, they were talking about, again, two-state solution, and supposedly it was like Hamas and Palestinians that didn't accept this two-state solution because they wanted to paint Hamas as being very radical. In 2004, in the spring, Hamas came out with a statement saying that they accept the paradigm of the two-state solution and are willing to agree and negotiate towards a long-term truce. So suddenly, and then within the next 2 months, Israel assassinated both of their top leaders, Sheikh Ahmed Yassin and Abdulaziz al-Rantisi, and not before, when they could paint them as not accepting the idea of living side by side with Jews. But when they came out and said, yes, we accept, that's when they're targeted. It is, again, throughout the years and the decades that actually Hamas has been very conciliatory, but it's gotten nothing for it. So, sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but I think that it is important that as we continue the education that we include that. And I know that we're in an environment where it might be scary to talk about that right now. And certainly we see the administration restricting what institutions are allowed to teach and wanting to take over again institutions and dismantle certain educational programs. So it's going to become more difficult, but it's part of documenting. It is, part of the history that we're writing and have an obligation to make sure that we get to a point, where the whole world knows what our silence over the space has contributed to.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Taz, I do have another excerpt that I would like to ask her. I don't know if I still have time for that or.
Yeah, we
Um,
can come back to you. Like, we can go through the panel and then go back to DJK's question, then you, and then we can, that way a few more others can come up. But yeah, we can definitely come back to it if that's okay with you.
yeah.
So we'll go next to Ask the Doc.
Salam, guys. Salam. How do you pronounce your name, sir?
Huwaida?
Huwaida. Thank you so much for coming in, and I really want to say the way you broke down the rights and our rights at the beginning was much needed, and I appreciate that you put it in very simple terms. And in today's world right now, recently, we kind of really need that. So I was wondering if you can kind of break down some of the things that or things that we aren't allowed to say or allowed to say. I know that's difficult, but how much can we criticize, our own government for their support and the Israeli government? Because a lot of us, I think some people, unfortunately have become afraid to speak out. And I just want to know, or maybe it'd be good for all of us to know what is the limits, what are things that we can and cannot say.
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And I will preface my answer by saying that we are in kind of uncertain times because the government is trying to really just kind of eliminate our freedom of speech, eliminate it. When they say that they are monitoring immigrants' social media, immigrants in this country, as I started off by saying, have First Amendment protections. And monitoring what they write on social media, and if you think that's anti-Semitic, then you can use that to deport them. And we know that the government, and certainly this government, but also the Democratic government, also the administrations, have also conflated anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, and so criticism of Israel, they have repeatedly called anti-Semitism. And so they're trying to do that. And we're in a phase right now, we're in a stage where we are fighting it and trying to make sure that they don't get away with it, because that, again, that would be detrimental to all of our rights and what we knew or now know as freedom of speech in the First Amendment will totally be upended. But in general, when you have the freedom of speech and freedom of association, you can say what's on your mind. You can, and even if some people don't like it, even if it's considered to be, hate speech or undesirable or whatnot, you have the right to say it, right? But you don't have the right to threaten people. You definitely don't have the right to threaten people. You don't have the right to create a dangerous situation. In law school, they always give the example of you can't falsely yell fire in a crowded theater. You might cause a stampede. Some people may die. You'd be responsible for that. That's not a freedom of speech issue. You can't threaten anybody. If you engage in defamation, certainly you can be sued on in civil court for some harm that you bring to someone that you lied against. But otherwise, you should be in the United States able to say what you think. In terms of if you want to talk about Hamas and the history, and even if you think that they are right and support what they're doing, but you can't. The United States has a law called the Material Support for Terror Law, so that if you are seen as providing any kind of tangible assistance to a foreign terrorist or an organization that's designated by the United States as a foreign terrorist organization, then you could be held liable. And that is what it means to provide material support is so broad, unfortunately. There is a 2010 case called Holder v. Humanitarian Project. It's escaping me right now. But it basically said even providing nonviolence training, right? Nonviolence training to an organization that is otherwise, considered to be a foreign terrorist organization, you can be liable for that. And that can subject you to criminal penalties here in the United States. And that's what they are trying to kind of say, that Mahmoud Khalil is doing, that he was a mouthpiece, he was advocating, he was spreading Hamas propaganda, etc. And that, but they didn't charge him with anything. They can't prosecute him. They're just kind of trying to deport him. So they're going to try to stick in. They're going to try to lie, and they're going to try to hit people with accusations that actually aren't true. And so we are in this phase where, can I say this or can't I say that? We're testing it, we're fighting it. And so I don't want to be seen as giving any kind of legal advice because of this precarious situation that we're in. But as our law has been in the United States, and what freedom of speech stands for and what it means, is you can say what you want, even if it's kind of hate speech, it's deplorable, whatever someone might think of it. If you're not harming someone, defaming someone, etc., you can say it. If you're not inciting, you can't incite to violence. Also, sorry, that's the other thing. You can't harm someone, you can't incite to violence. But if you're seen in any way as providing material support to an organization that is deemed or considered a foreign terrorist organization, you can get in trouble for that. And unfortunately, what qualifies again as material support has been so broad. It shouldn't be explaining Hamas. Hamas. I was listening to a publisher in a long time, like a 40-year journalist, Helena Koban, speak a little bit earlier, and she recently co-authored a book about Hamas. It's called Understanding Hamas and Why It Matters. And while she was talking about it, she basically said, I could probably be arrested right now because she is explaining, what she published could be considered spreading Hamas propaganda, and advocating for people kind of understanding what this organization is. That in normal times isn't considered any kind of material support for terror. But again, what we're seeing now, we just don't know. So I'm sorry that's not more clear. And I guess I would say, I'm not, I made the decision, and I'm speaking to you freely here, and this is obviously on the net, and so some people can hear me talk about the history of Hamas and whatnot, and if the government's going to try to come after me for that, I think that these are battles that need to be fought, because if we self-censor, then they win, and we can't let that happen. So, but I can't make that choice for everyone, right? Yeah, it's... I guess what I would say about that. I know that wasn't so clear. I hope it's somewhat clear.
No, I think that it was very clear, and I think that we'll have more answers probably when the verdict is out on Mahmoud Khalil, because what they are doing with him is basically, like you're saying, they just made this definition of material support so broad that so many different things can fall under it, like even opening a TikTok live and defending Hamas maybe would be considered material support. Do you think they're desperate? Like, that's how desperate they are, the Zionists, passing these laws about anti-Semitism and this and that? Do you think this is just out of desperation?
Absolutely. I think that they know that they basically lost, and in the court of world opinion, they lost, and so what they need to do now is just kind of silence people's ability to speak. And it's not that it's new. A couple of years ago, I was invited to speak at a local high school, right? And I was on a panel of people talking about their experience with discrimination. And I literally spoke for 7 minutes to 4 different groups. And I spoke about my experience as a Palestinian and experienced what I saw and did in Palestine. And Zionists had a field day. They literally were up in arms about how I could be invited to spread anti-Semitism in this school. And they ended up, the ruckus that they raised ended up getting the superintendent and the principal of the school to lose their jobs. So this attempt to silence us is not new, but certainly they're intensifying it, and certainly they're this administration, but not only this administration. It is adhering and it's ratcheting it up. But I also want to be clear that the previous administration laid the groundwork for what's happening, and supposedly our liberal, supposed to be liberal institutions also help lay the groundwork for what is happening. Because during the previous administration, we had students and protesters that were being doxxed and losing opportunities and losing, job offers and threatened and all of these other things. And they were also being defamed and being called anti-Semitic. And, the universities did not stand up for them. The administration actually contributed to indicating that what they were doing in calling for divestment and not investing in genocide, etc., in labeling that as anti-Semitism, again, laid the groundwork for what we are seeing now for Trump to ratchet it up. It is shameful. I really think that this would be just like today we recognize what a danger and how shameful the period of McCarthyism was in the United States. This is like McCarthyism 2.0, and we'll look back and this will be a period. This is McCarthyism plus a genocide of great shame.
Yeah, but thankfully, Gen Z is like educated and they are aware and they're very active, and thank God for social media, because these Zios, they have it now, maybe for the next maybe few years, 10 years, but when all these old people are out and the young people come in, it's all going to change. So, they can think that they're making a safe place for Zionists in Israel, but it's just becoming more and more unsafe, and it's a pariah state. So I just like to add that, because I know there's Zionists in here watching, and I want them to know that nobody's going to ever forgive this. Who cares about the Trump administration on the next few years? It's going to, be here. This is a long-term thing, and there's a lot of young people, educated people that are now aware, and we're never going to forget, and it's going to change in the long run. This is the end of Zionism.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, let me make a plug here for one thing that was in the end of my bio, is that I'm really encouraging young people to be involved in the American political process. And I know that is not so attractive to a lot of people, because we don't feel like we have a political home when you look at the American political system. But one of the things that I want to believe you 100%, and it's what I think too, that in a few years, this younger generation, those that have done the encampments and those that are more aware, will be in positions of power. But we have to remember that to our electoral system here, still it is very corrupt. It's not democratic. All of the big money in politics still enables people to get into power that don't represent us. So yes, we have your Gen Z is phenomenal, but if we don't end up changing how our campaign finance system here and how money works to corrupt politics and to buy off politicians, then we might find ourselves in the same kind of positions where just big money and Zionists and other interest groups that just are very wealthy and can buy the policies that they want will overrun, right? We can't let that happen. So we have to, I am, at least in my humble opinion, we have to merge our education and advocacy with political, electoral organizing. And if I have a minute, I'll just tell you really quickly that the University of Michigan students did that last summer. And I was floored. I was so impressed because they had a really powerful encampment. And then in Michigan, we have 3 universities here, including U of M, that the Board of Regents actually is elected. It's not appointed by the governor like in most states, they are elected. And so the students wanted to mobilize to elect someone. And they asked me if I would run, which is not something I wanted to do, but I was so kind of impressed that they wanted to take their on the ground organizing and turn it into kind of political mobilization. I said I would. And in 3 weeks, they built a phenomenal campaign, registered so many people to vote. And at the convention where the vote was supposed to be held, they dominated. It was at the Democratic Party convention, and the Democrats were floored. Because students were there in full force, and they were pleasant, and they were helpful, and they were kind of excited, which some people, establishment Democrats, found that welcoming, but unfortunately, The ones in power did not, and found that as a threat, and we firmly believe that they actually cheated, because even though we got like a majority of the votes, they say that we didn't win. But what happened is that the establishment now knows the power of those students and the power of them to turn out people to vote the next time. And so when we recently had elections in the Michigan Democratic Party here, all of the people running came to us, came to the students, like, wanted their involvement. And so I think that was just an important showing. I think everybody can do that, just showing up.
Well, that's so good to hear. I'm actually from Michigan too. I'm a physician and I'm Palestinian. My family's from the West Bank and I work in Detroit. So
Oh, awesome.
good to see you and get to know you. So I appreciate you coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
It's great being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Your account? Sorry, Ted. Is this your account? Just so we know to follow it. Are you going to be active on it or?
No, I'm actually not on.
We had this.
I'm not on TikTok. I mean, I have an account, but I don't post anything, so I really don't have any followers. But I'm on other. You can find me other places on Blue Sky. I'm trying to get more active on Facebook, Instagram, X.
What's your Instagram?
My name. I think it's Huwaida.Arraf.
Yes. We were trying to get her to have her own page on an account on TikTok, but she's overwhelmed and she's like, I don't know how to use TikTok, but inshallah, we can try to get you as many followers. So I can share that out if you want to open and be like really active more on TikTok. So we can share your original account and push that out. I think you are a voice. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and definitely like come back. Taz hosts like amazing lives, and we would definitely love to have you back. I just had one last question because you mentioned it at the end of your last piece. Do you think we should be competing with them, the lobbyists, like and having like our own kind of packs and stuff? I know that some people are working on it, but
yeah, I mean there are political PACs that have Palestinian, Muslim, Arab that have been established. And while the system is as it is, yes, I think we need to participate in the system, but I don't necessarily think that we have to entirely play their game. Unfortunately, it does cost money to run for office, but we don't have to kind of get caught into everything they tell you that they have to do. And why does it cost money to run for office? Because you need to get votes, right? So you think that all of the money that you're fundraising is going to be used to get votes, whether you are sending out mailers or you are making TV ads, which are totally expensive. But if instead of raising the millions of dollars to run for office so you can get these votes by going the traditional route, TV and everything else, which is so expensive, if you actually can inspire people to come out and volunteer for you, because in the end you want the votes. And running a campaign, they try to get the votes by buying people, hiring people to go door to door, running big fancy commercial that are very expensive. But if you have a lot of grassroots people knocking doors for you, I think that is even more powerful. So I don't think we need to totally play their game, but we do need to support politicians that are unapologetic and that speak out and stand up for us, because we know that they are pressured and they are really threatened. Their jobs are threatened. And we saw last year two very outspoken, wonderful members of Congress basically lose their elections because of the millions of dollars that AIPAC spent against them. But those that still speak out, speak truth to power, as they say, and stand with us, I think we need to stand with them. And if it's giving $1 here and there or volunteering to make phone calls or knock doors for them, I think that would be wonderful and very much appreciated, in a way of kind of supporting winning in the electoral system. And the other way is also, especially you young people, consider running for office, right? It's not something that's far off that we can't do. And we need people that are like you, more kind of more open to the world, more understanding what's going on, and not bought, to actually be the ones representing us at all levels of government.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you, Huwaida. We will go next to Ahlam.
Hi, Salam.
Salam.
Thank you for being here first. We really appreciate you coming here. You know, like Doc said, like everyone said, Taz, mashallah, runs amazing panels with amazing guests, and you included, mashallah.
Thank you.
So there was somebody in the chat, Becky, I don't know if you're still here, but I believe that your question was answered, regarding, so her question was, how can we protest our international classmates' visas being canceled without risking our own well-being? And I believe you said basically we kind of have to wait for Mahmoud's case to settle and for us to get an answer as to how they respond to him, for us to know how, you know, it's going to go moving forward, right?
Well, that is fighting in the law. You know, the legal route is one way. I wouldn't say necessarily that you have to wait. And last week, for example, we saw a powerful demonstration by Jewish students at Columbia. You know, chaining themselves to the gates, making our voices heard that we absolutely oppose these government's policies and their attack on our civil liberties is important. If you are, and so I understand, like if you are an immigrant to this country, that you might not want to risk it and you might want to wait a little bit, but certainly those that have a little bit more security, even though the government is threatening citizens now too, but if you have a little bit kind of more security, are a citizen, if you have certain kind of privilege, white privilege, Jewish privilege, etc., and can use that, I think that that would be helpful form of support to send a strong message, not just to the government, but also to these institutions. Again, it's shameful that so many of them are capitulating. They can, you know, I saw a notice from the University of Michigan the other day that's saying that the number of students who've had their visas revoked is now up to 22 at the University of Michigan. And the administration was trying to assure the community that they are not canceling the student status. It is the government that's actually canceling their statuses. But that's not sufficient. You know, you can't say, oh, I can't do anything about it. They absolutely can do something about it. And there's precedent for universities suing the government for what they're doing on a number of different levels. And, you know, for a number of different, there are a number of different causes of action there. And I think that they know that they can do that because these universities are very litigious and they litigate a lot of things, certainly litigating to fight this assault on our civil liberties, on their freedom of free thought and education at the institutions, and the assault really on international students. They can band together in one lawsuit, or each one can sue separately, but they're not doing that. They just seem to be trying to, they're bowing down to the administration so as to not jeopardize their funding, which is shameful, really. We see some institutions that have refused to do that, and really more power to them. But some of the big ones, Harvard, Columbia, University of Michigan, more to come certainly, are absolutely shameful. So these kinds of demonstrations also, and you can demonstrate right in different ways, but to put pressure on the institutions also, I think is important.
Absolutely. And I did have my own question as well. So you had mentioned earlier regarding taxes, right? And like for those who fill out W-4s on the second page, you know, you can mark yourself as tax exempt. It's totally legal. However, when it comes to, exercising our right to protest, you know, no taxation without representation, what are the legal consequences that could actually be faced? So like, you know, for some people, I know the IRS themselves, you know, picks and chooses, but realistically, for just an average citizen, what could be the expectation if we choose to exercise that right?
Again, I don't, I'm not very knowledgeable, and this is not my area of the law or anything. But just some of the things that I can think of is, you can have the IRS come after you. You can end up, having your wages garnished if it would, which would probably mean filing a lawsuit, etc. But you could have the amount that you owe, totally build up, the IRS coming after you, having to go through a lawsuit, end up having to get your wages garnished, and other things are just some of the things. I don't know if any of that can lead to imprisonment. Honestly, I'm not knowledgeable on that, so I don't want to speak there. But
Okay.
that said, I do know a number of people who have protested and who've been protesting for years, not wanting their taxes to go to war, towards war and towards killing and etc. And
Well, yeah,
Well,
because we have like,
can
I
I
don't know if you're
can I
familiar with the
answer her
Leahy laws,
question?
but
oh,
Oh,
someone
like,
Can
else
I?
spoke.
no, hold on one second. Sorry. Just one second. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
no, it's cool. I was just gonna say, so if you're familiar with like the Leahy laws, right? They protect us. They're supposed to help protect, citizens and ensure that our tax dollars are not used to fund any human rights violations. So when we have laws set up in place like that, like why is it so difficult for us to actually utilize them?
Well, the Leahy Law, it doesn't actually protect us, and there is no what they call like private right of action to, that you can't basically file any action or claim any kind of protection based on the Leahy Law. It is a standard for the government in terms of when they like what they need to do in order to ensure that they are abiding by kind of human rights standards when they provide military funding to a foreign country. And so it says that foreign military, like U.S., should not provide weapons to units that are they have evidence, the U.S. has evidence of, that commits grave, human rights abuses, grave abuses of human rights, and they the government needs to be making that determination. Like if it is sending weapons to Israel, it needs to be telling Israel that it can't be used for like this unit, this unit, this unit can't be used. But there are so many. There's actually a lawsuit on this right now. Dawn Democracy for the Arab World Now has filed a lawsuit based on really on the Leahy Law. But what they're saying is that the United States has been in how they've administered it. Basically, they are being arbitrary and capricious in their administration of it, that has allowed Israel really to get away with getting U.S. weapons and not having to be accountable, or basically has allowed the United States to continue shipping weapons to Israel, even though it has credible information that it is the units that these weapons are going to are accused of grave rights violations. And we do know this because a case that actually my partner worked on is a case of one of the units that was responsible for the death of an elderly, a 70-year-old Palestinian American, Muhammad Assad. That the unit that killed him is notorious actually for the tactics that they use against Palestinians. And a lot of evidence was submitted to the government under the previous administration, to the State Department and to the Department of Defense, etc. And they said that they were investigating, and then they said that they actually might sanction this one unit, which is obviously not enough, but it was a start. And then Secretary of State Antony Blinken comes out and says, no, we're satisfied that Israel has, taken steps to remedy this, which is absolutely ridiculous because they've taken no steps. But it is, again, the implementation. They are bypassing their own rules and regulations in order to continue shipping weapons to Israel. And that's what this lawsuit pursued by Dawn is about. But no, U.S. citizens can't say the Leahy Law protects us, unfortunately. So that wouldn't be able to be used as, a justification for not paying taxes, at least not kind of in the law. Morally, consciously, yes, but not legally.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ahlam. One question that was in the comments was hold on one second. Okay, it was can you explain, and there's this, I'm gonna merge two questions actually. Can you explain how safe we are as citizens and that we should go harder in terms of making a difference, protesting, and then one, I'm gonna kind of merge the other, and then your thoughts about green card holders going to protests.
About green card holders going to protests, look, it is absolutely a right that is protected. It just, it is, you can get how the law actually is as we know it. Like if you're on a visa, saying anything should not get you deported. If you break the law, you could get deported, yes. Green card holders have a little bit more protection. Whether visa holder or green card holder, your speech is protected, but we see that this administration is trying to strip that away from us. So I would have said, yeah, you can go out as long as you're not doing, breaking the law, because you don't want to give them, something to get on you, even though that should not actually matter if you're a green card holder. But now they are using, right, they're using artificial intelligence to get people's faces, to identify people, and they're going after them in different ways. So I cannot tell you right now that nothing will happen to you if you're a green card holder and you attend a protest. And that is just sad and shameful for me to say. I fully believe that we have to win this battle. I mean, if we lose, I'm not being alarmist here or anything like that. I'm being serious. If we kind of lose this battle and the government is allowed to deport green card holders and students based just on speech, what they say if they attend a protest, then our democracy as we know it is gone. We're just, I think we're already sliding into fascism, but that's why we have to win this case. So we are fighting it. And I think people, again, kind of should fight and not be scared and not self-censor as the government wants us to. But I can't tell you that going out to a protest won't get you targeted by the government, that they won't try to disappear you and deport you. Unfortunately, not until we get some rulings from the federal courts. Was there another question in there?
It was how, as U.S. citizens, are we protected, and how can we push?
Yeah. So far, U.S. citizens, I can't even say legally anymore because this administration is violating the law in so many ways, but how it was for a long time before this administration. I mean, U.S. citizens, you can't get deported. Where they're going to deport you to, your country of citizenship, that's where you belong. They can't deport you. I mean, they could certainly try to prosecute you and imprison you, but as we heard earlier, the United States is talking about now possibly shipping, or Trump is talking about possibly shipping citizens off to prisons in other countries, which is, again, outrageous.
El Salvador, yeah.
It's not lawful. It absolutely not. So I would say, and what I'm doing is I'm definitely not restricting myself in what I say and how I advocate and going to protest. And I think that if, I've spoken to Palestinian Americans, even those who have citizenship, who are worried for different reasons, including worried for their families back home. Because we talked about earlier, the sharing of intelligence and whatnot. And this government very vindictive. It's not like they can't look at a Palestinian or get a Palestinian American citizen. And, if they have family in Gaza, a lot of Palestinian Americans honestly are afraid of that now. Like what they might do here could affect their families back in Palestine. And that's just a ridiculous position to be in. But we can't say as lawyers, as anyone right now, no, that can't happen. No, that won't happen. No, that's not legal. We unfortunately can't say that right now. So I said earlier, if you have a different, if you have certain privileges, white privilege, especially, if you're Jewish, anti-Zionist and speaking out, I think that's very important. I think it's important that we organize in community and protect each other. And that's what I think is the most important. It's not always, the demonstrations in and of themselves, but what comes from the demonstrations. It is the networks that are built, and it is the information that is shared, and it is the kind of the solidarity and the affinity. Because, demonstrating this administration or demonstrating against this administration, I don't think it's going to bother them much at all. So there are other things that we can do. I'm not saying don't demonstrate, but the important part of it is to organize in community and to figure out how we can be the most effective in what we do. I mean, maybe it's not a demonstration, maybe it's a teach-in, maybe it's, something else. And then also how we can protect each other. So if we have people that are attending, are organizing, planning meetings that feel vulnerable, how can we protect them? that everything that goes into actually doing a successful action, focusing on that. I think that we need to even emphasize that more, because we can better protect ourselves in community. And I think overall our effectiveness will be more that way. So I think that's what I would advocate. And I'm sorry and I'm ashamed and I'm thinking twice, because I say that we can't back down and everybody needs to speak up. But when it comes to, individuals, if someone is scared for a very legitimate reason, I don't want to say, don't be scared, get out there, it's your right. I mean, it is, but I can't guarantee that ICE is not going to be, coming after you. And again, that's just a
Yeah,
very shameful position to be in. But again, just community and protect each other.
absolutely. Yeah, it's tough times and very sad and difficult times that we are currently in. I don't think anybody had ever anticipated this. But let me go to Janine.
How are you? I don't know if this was answered already, but what advice, if you can, you don't have to, by the way, what advice do you give to visa holders, especially student visa holders, who are now like scrambling around trying to gain some type of like rooting here in America in order not to be, because we see that they are deporting visa holders for close to nothing without any justification or trial, without any due process. So what advice would you give to them? Should they seek legal help or should they just kind of remain in the shadows?
Sorry, are you talking about visa holders that have not yet had their visas canceled, or those that have learned that their
Yes,
visas have been canceled?
that have not yet had their visa canceled.
Um, yeah, actually, I don't. Is there a way I could say, it's not a bad idea to contact an attorney or to contact a legal organization that defends civil rights, like some of the ones I mentioned, the National Lawyers Guild or the ACLU, or private immigration attorneys to seek advice. But the advice that's really going to be given is how to best protect yourself. And actually, there are resources out there on the website of the National Immigration Law Center. I think has a lot of good resources, and then they might link to also others in terms of what are your rights, like if ICE tries to come to your door. That's I think that's very important, because you and any kind of private property, ICE can't come on legally without a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant, actually a judicial warrant signed by a judge. You don't have to open the door for them or anything that they come to your house unless they have a judicial warrant. A lot of people don't know that. I think it's important to know that, and other things. So I would highly recommend that people go to the website of the National Immigration Law Center, and I could, in the end, look up a few more. I have a list of some organizations that have very helpful, like know your rights, do's and don'ts, in order to kind of protect yourself if ICE should come looking for you. Other than that, like I said, I think one of the most important things is to just have that community and to have a plan. Like, what would I do if my visa was canceled, or if kind of ICE comes for me? What are my plans in terms of family? If I have it, having that kind of contingency plan. Students, I don't know if they have kind of children, spouses, or whatnot. Here, some might, but also taking that into consideration, family and other things, in kind of like worst case scenarios. And other communities also are building networks of support. I think that is very, very important to have. In terms of like laying low in the shadows, if that means, don't kind of participate, don't speak out, don't go to protests or things like that. If that's an individual choice. And if I totally don't blame anyone for doing that until, we see what the federal courts say on this. At the same time, I maintain that nobody can afford to stay silent. But again, I don't want to everyone has to make that choice for themselves. So
One, oh,
yeah, no,
sorry.
just
Wait.
if you want me to, I mean, Taz, we can see if you want me to send some information over or whatnot
Oh
from some
yeah,
people.
that would be
Yeah, that would be.
amazing. Because I
Okay.
have like a Discord group, and then there's several others like Ask the Doc that we can actually, and he has like about 300, 400 people. We can actually share that information and pass it along to many, many people, like you said, in different communities. So absolutely.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you.
There was also a comment in the chat by a dirty discussing sign. It says that is incorrect. They can administratively detain without warrant for those whose visas have expired, been revoked by the State Department. What do you say to in that instance?
They cannot come on private property without a judicial warrant. If you are in your home or somebody else's home, you do not have to open the door for them if they do not have a judicial warrant. If you are out in public, yes, they can detain you. But they might, come back with a judicial warrant, but that is generally the law. Also, kind of law enforcement here also, they have a warrant to come to your home, etc. So, no, yeah, that is absolutely true that they have to have a judicial warrant to go on private property. Now, that doesn't mean they always do it. Of course, I saw a video the other day of the owner of the property telling an ICE agent to get out, but they didn't, and they went and arrested a guy anyway. So it depends on where you are. They might do it. If university, so on university private property, and the university has allowed them to come on or hasn't kicked them out, they will do it, and they will kind of abuse their authority or abuse their force in that way. But if you are in your home, for example, and they come knocking and they don't show you a warrant slipping under the door signed by a judge, you don't have to open the door for them.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Janine.
Just one more. I'm so sorry. Can I call ICE on Zionists that I think are here on visas that should be revoked for tea activities? Because I feel like some of them, some of them condoning Kahana, some of them promoting Kahana, like, we know his organization was designated tea. Can I do that as a natural born citizen?
Maybe I don't know what to. Yeah, you can. You can. I think I would go back to, the tactics that we're using. I mean, they're using low, slimy kind of tactics. I don't think that we necessarily should do the same, even if we could. We know that they're doing it to silence us. We have nothing, like, we're not afraid of the debate. We're not, we know that kind of law and justice and morality and everything else is on our side. They don't have any of that on our side. So all they can do is silence us. So I guess I would say that, yeah, you could. One, I don't think this administration would actually heed that. But two, I don't think that we need to resort to their tactics. And I would hope, if there are Zionists here, maybe really do some soul searching. Like,
No, they don't have one. They don't have one.
That is what has been, of course, kind of the level of death, destruction, and loss has been horrible. But I think what has also hit me so hard is the level of hate from some people. It's really hard to understand. Like, as long as I've been fighting and the horrible things that I've seen, I would never wish any child death. I would never wish anyone death, right? But the number of the comments and the people that just are calling for more deaths and can look at a child and, and cheer the deaths, it just makes me think, like, what kind of people are you? And that's scary. And that's what I said. I always like to think that somewhere there's a conscience, there's a soul, and people can just do the work and find that. But that is just really disturbing. Any Zionists here, what they've done to kind of my people, my land, my friends, all of that in Palestine, I would still not wish death upon their child. And yet that some people can do it so freely, and it's really disturbing. Just really
Hmm.
disturbing.
We had Amir Zahir last week, and he said the only thing that they know is violence, right? And we don't like they're that's the only thing they're good at. So that's what they resort to everything. And we see it, like we see, the threats even online, coming after people's kids. They want to do X, Y, and Z. But this is who they are. And for Zionists, I think the soul searching they're far beyond that. But maybe those that are somewhat on like the neutral side of they're not sure or they see both, then I think maybe we can help and change those minds. But the hardcore Zionists, especially the ones that we are seeing on different on these apps, they're just vile and absolutely bad people. So but it's for the Zionists, I think there's no soul searching. There's no soul. Um but a few of them, there's some hope, but a lot of them that we've seen, we've had a lot of anti-Zionist Jews. They've called them self-hating Jews, capos, just really disgusting name calling, and this is what we're dealing with, and this is again what a lot of the Judaism in general is dealing with. I think Israel and Zionism is the biggest threat to Judaism. But I'm gonna go back and pass it along to anyone that does have any questions. Alal, uh, if you can ask, and then we'll go to Linda, I think, and if Doc or Ahlam, anybody else had any more questions, and then we can wrap it up from there.
Thank you, Tasnimo. I have another excerpt from this book. Again, thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to try to make this quick, guys. It says here, in his 1998 book on the Middle East, From Beirut to Jerusalem, the New York Times journalist Thomas Friedman gave an anecdote from 1982 about the real, less acknowledged mission of Israeli forces. And it says here, two targets in particular seemed to interest Ariel Sharon's army. One was the PLO Research Center. There were no guns at the PLO Research Center, no ammunition, and no fighters. But there was something more dangerous. Books about Palestine, old records and land deeds belonging to Palestinian families, photographs of Palestinian life in Palestine before 1948, historical archives about Palestinian life before 1948, and most important, maps of pre-1948 Palestine with every Palestinian village on it before the State of Israel came into being and erased many of them. The research center was like an ark containing the Palestinians' heritage, some of their credentials as a nation. In a certain sense, this is what Sharon most wanted to take home from Beirut. You could read it in the graffiti the Israeli boys left behind on the research center walls. In quotes, Palestinians? What's that? And Palestinians? Fuck you. And Arafat? I will hump your mother. End quote.
Oh,
I want to hear what your reaction is.
I mean, that's absolutely true. Not just in 82, we have information about that it was done also in 1948. All of the books that were stolen from also Palestinian homes. There's a film about it. What's it called? The Great Book. I'm forgetting what it's called now, but it kind of documents the treasure trove of kind of Palestinian books and artifacts that were taken back in 48. But their destruction of kind of art and history, even when I was living in the occupied West Bank, I would see it when the soldiers invaded, where they would go in the Cultural Arts Center and destroy it and defecate and steal. It is an attack, like we talked about social genocide. It's an attack on everything that is Palestinian because it contributes to the erasure. And so that is absolutely what we know they have done, and they continue to do. They continue to do. If we look at even what they've done in Gaza, some just historical uh, uh, architecture, places that are thousands of years old, and documents. Why did they, blow up or set fire to books in universities, things like that? Just attacking every aspect of our kind of existence and our ability to document. But it hasn't worked, and it won't work. And the more they keep doing it, just kind of exposes really what they're about and their ultimate goals. So, we've had, they can continue, and maybe some has been lost, but their overall goal has not been achieved. Their overall goal is of making people kind of so desperate that they leave Palestine, and that those of us in the diaspora forget about Palestine. It has not worked, and the new generation, my 10-year-old daughter is as passionate about Palestine and justice for Palestine as myself, my parents, my great grandparents. And so no one's forgetting, and the documentation and a lot of it that is in our conscience, in our memories, passed down. So yeah, they may have destroyed some things, but we're fighting it, and they just won't. As much as they try, they won't erase us. But definitely that is what they're trying to do. And again, it goes back and it just reinforces, this is what settler colonialism is. They have to, in order for their project to succeed, they have to replace us. And they have to kind of erase us in all the ways that you erase a people, and that is certainly part of it. So, yeah, it's horrific, but absolutely, and like I said, not just in that circumstance. Back to 1948, and even today.
Thank you. We've seen something similar to this type of action in other genocides around the world, where they've burned books and archives and historical sites. You brought up Gaza. Just a year and a half ago, they destroyed the third oldest church in the world. Yeah. And it just goes to show how much the Zionists have control over our media, because I did not hear a peep from CNN or the BBC or Fox News or anything like that alarmed anyone about the destruction of the third oldest church in the world. What is this? You see what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, erasure is definitely something that we're dealing with, and we need to fight against. So thank you so much for answering my question.
Thank you, Lal. Thank you, Huwaida. And then I know Linda had a question. She wanted to get your advice. Go ahead, Linda.
Salam again, Huwaida. Thank you again for taking the time out to answer everybody's questions. I briefly discussed this the other night, but I do want your advice on this, and hopefully this can help others moving forward. It's regarding an incident that occurred about a week ago, I want to say. I went to go open a bank account, and I was told that the person in charge of opening the bank accounts was currently busy. I was under the weather. I wear hijab, but I walked in with a sweatshirt and hoodie on. And she said, "Can I get your ID? I'll make you an appointment." Upon seeing my identification card, after explaining to me that I only needed 2 documents to open up account, suddenly she says, "Where are you from?" I already knew where it was going. I said, "Jersey." And she said, "No, where are you from?" I will never deny being Palestinian, and I know that I didn't have to answer it, but I proudly said I'm Palestinian. And she said, "Well, with you, we need to move you to a specialized department, so you need to bring in all your paperwork." I said, "Excuse me." I said, "Paperwork? What kind of paperwork?" And she said, "Your passport and your paperwork, and they need to sort through it." I said, "Why is that? I'm an American citizen. I was born and raised here. Why would they need a copy of my US passport? It just doesn't make any sense." She said, "It's a new policy." So I was very confused. I'm going to be honest with you. I took a few minutes. I called my mom, who had been banking with them for a very long time, and she said, "No, they've never asked for any of these kinds of documents. I'm going to meet you there." And she showed up. And the man who decided to insert himself into the conversation said, "Well, we do this with people who are coming in from Cuba and Brazil, anywhere that's sanctioned." She said, "I'm sorry. She was born and raised in this country. She's not from Brazil or Cuba. And is Palestine being sanctioned by the US? And he said, I really don't know. Okay. So I came back in and I said, I want to speak to the manager. The manager is not available. I said, surely somebody's running the place right now. I need to speak to them unless you'd like to be reported for racism and discrimination. And they said they're gone for the day, but you can call this number. I asked for the woman's name and I left. A lawyer friend said, try contacting civil rights attorneys in your area. I called corporate. They said they're going to look into it. I'm still waiting on a call back. But I want to know, what rights do we have when they're imposing these false policies on us? Let's be real.
Yeah, did they show you any kind of written policy?
No, they did not.
Yeah, I mean, because if it's just a written policy, then it should definitely be challenged. If it's not, and it's just a form of just discrimination that is the kind of workers or even upper management that's discriminating, yeah, I think you can. I mean, you have a few options. One is, although they're kind of trying to dismantle these federal protection organizations, but there is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that you could file a complaint with. And then, sorry, just tell me where it ended up. Like, where are you now with it?
I'm waiting on a call back from an attorney, and corporate said that they would look into it and get back to me. I actually wanted to show up again. Upon going back in, the security guard tells me, you need to calm down. I said, I don't need to calm down. And I let everybody know in the lobby waiting that if you're opening an account or banking with them, that they do discriminate, that I was just told that I needed to be referred to a specialized department upon seeing that I wear hijab. Obviously, they have an issue with either my religion or my ethnicity. In either case, you shouldn't be banking here. And I was asked to leave, and I left.
So corporate hasn't done anything yet, and then you're waiting for a call back from an attorney. I think you can. Hopefully, the attorney will get back to you. Sometimes, if the attorney writes a letter or contacts the bank on your behalf, I don't know if you want to continue banking there, but
No.
yeah, I mean that generally, because they're not allowed to discriminate based on things like this. I mean, they can consider whatever and giving loans or whatnot, but certain things, financial income, but this is not. This is a pure ethnic, possibly religious also discrimination, and that it is not allowed. I think, having a local attorney communicate with them, it depends on how far you go, if you really want to take it to kind of any kind of
Huwaida, you know what it is? This is not news to us, right? This is not something that's far from the normal. We've all experienced it from one, end of the spectrum to another. But under Trump now, if this is going to be a continuous thing, then we need to nip it in the butt before it gets bigger. If they're already starting doing this, and this can potentially help somebody else out in the future. I'm normally the type that I don't like to ruffle any feathers, but I think feathers need to be ruffled.
Yeah. No, look, you're absolutely right. They're not allowed to do this, and I think they need to be kind of called out on it. That said, I don't, even though I am an attorney, I don't always think that, lawsuits or litigating is the most effective means. And not that this one wouldn't have a lot of hurdles if you decide to kind of do that. But generally, being contacted by an attorney, and sometimes it's kind of the social pressure of calling them out, like public pressure, something what you did, telling people other ways that you can call them out kind of in the community publicly. I mean, shame them for what they did. I would consider that, but get the advice of attorney when he calls you back, or he or she calls you back, is, I mean, that's definitely what they did is absolutely wrong, and banks are not allowed to discriminate. And so, but the question is like, is the most effective thing like going the legal route or not? Uh, I don't always think so, but that doesn't mean like definitely explore your options and see what this attorney says.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Huwaida. Does anybody else on the panel have any questions? Otherwise, we will wrap it up. I think we're coming a little bit over our time limit, but I do want to tell you thank you so much for being here with us, Huwaida. It's been an absolute honor to have you with us. This was a phenomenal, phenomenal educational live that a lot of people did benefit from. So I thank you again for joining us, and hopefully we'll be able to get some of those like a manual or some documents that you can share with us that we can pass along to the rest of the community in regards to protective rights for those that are, citizens or green card holders. But thank you again, Huwaida. It's been an honor to have you here with us, and inshallah we will see you again maybe soon.
There's two more things really quickly.
Yeah.
Uh, Sorry, I didn't get the name. Actually, who last spoke?
Linda.
Was it Linda? Linda. Okay, I'm sorry, Linda. Uh, Another thing, if you said you contacted an attorney and waiting to call back, I don't know if you called I think the Jersey branch of CARE is actually pretty strong. And if you haven't called them, I would. The Council on Arab Islam, American Islamic Relations. I think they handle actually a lot of cases like this, and probably would be the best to advise there. So private attorney maybe, but definitely if you haven't called CARE, do that. And I just saw a quick comment. Someone, I don't know who, said, ask her if she thinks Egypt should do more since they share a border with Gaza. So I wanted to answer that. Yes, absolutely, Egypt should do more. What Egypt should do is not respect, Israel's policies. Like I said, Israel is the one that's imposing the closure, and Egypt, just like every other country, is not defying it. I think it absolutely needs to be defined. I think, Jordan and Egypt both should cancel their peace agreements with Israel, and Egypt should open the border. The first responsibility is on Israel, okay? Because Israel is the occupying power. Israel imposed the illegal siege, etc. But shame on Egypt for abiding by that. And yes, absolutely, I think that they should do more than just rhetoric. They need to open Rafah and insist and drive their trucks through, no matter what it causes. Is, in my opinion, we are literally in a situation where we are seeing 2.2 million people being exterminated, and these countries aren't doing anything. They're just watching it. I think anything that we can do, planes flying over, ships coming, driving trucks through, I think it all honestly needs to be done.
Absolutely, absolutely. Jordan, same thing, right? To share the same border with the West Bank. Inshallah, ya Rabbi, you see something soon. And we will be following along with the Gaza Flotilla. So hopefully we do see that moving very soon. And we will support in any way that we can, whether, like you mentioned, to contact the representatives to protect all of you on board. But thank you again, Huwaida Arraf, for being here with us. It's been an absolute honor and pleasure to have you. And inshallah, we'll see you again very, very soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you for my first TikTok live.
Yay. We'll see about building your TikTok account. If you're interested, we'll help you out, inshallah.
I know I need to do it. Inshallah. Thank you. I will be
Thank
sending you
you.
those documents to share. Yeah.
Yes, that will be so helpful for everybody to refer to.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you again. Salam, Huwaida. Thank you so
Bye.
much.